In this video, we're going to review an example involving simple interest. So let's go ahead and read the question first. So Jack invested $10,000 in a high-risk and low-risk stock last year. The high-risk stock earned 12% interest, and the low-risk stock earned 5% interest. At the end of the year, Jack earned $592 in interest. How much money did Jack invest in each type of stock? Okay, so first thing you're going to need to know is the equation for simple interest. Okay, so the equation for simple interest equals I, so that's the interest, I, equals PRT. So where I is the interest that you earn, right? And P equals the principal, or the amount that you put in the beginning of, in the beginning. So the amount that you start with, principal. And let's see, R is the interest rate, right? So that's rate. And T equals the time, and it's usually in years. Okay, so there's two things that we don't know. So we're trying to figure out how much money did Jack invest in each type of stock. Okay, so what we don't know is how much did he invest in the low risk and how much did he invest in the high risk stock. So let's go ahead and define our two unknown variables. So let X equal the principal, right? The amount that he put in, the principal in the high risk stock. Okay, and let's define Y to be the principal that he put in, the amount of money he put in the low risk stock. Okay, so in the first sentence it says Jack invested $10,000, okay, into these two different types of stock. So we know that if you were to add X and Y, you should get $10,000, right? Because he put in $10,000. So $10,000 equals X plus Y. That's the first equation from the first sentence. Okay, and then so there was 12% interest in in the high risk. There's 12% interest with stock in the high risk, the X, and then 5% interest for the amount of money that goes into the low risk stock. Okay, and then at the end of the day, he ends up earning $592. So if you add up, so 592, this would be the interest that he earns in the high risk. The interest from the high risk plus the interest, okay, from the low risk. Right? If you were to add up both these things, you should get the total amount of interest that he earned, which is $592. Okay, so let's see. The interest from the high risk, okay, we have an equation for interest is the principal times the rate times the time. So let's plug in that equation here. So 592. Okay, so interest from high risk. Let's focus on that. So the principal for the high risk. So I know it's going to equal PRT. So let's start with the P. The principal for the high risk is X. Okay, the R for the high risk, the interest rate, is 0.12, right? The 12%. The T for the high risk is 1 year, right? Because he did it last year. He did this stuff last year, so this is 1 year. Okay, so that's the interest from the high risk, right? So this and this are the same. All right, so that plus. So now let's do the interest from the low risk. Okay, so the principal for the low risk is Y. P is 0.05, and T is, again, 1 year. Okay, so the interest from the low risk is this. All right, so, I need to solve these two equations, right? When I say two equations, I'm referring to this equation here, okay, and this equation here. Now I can't solve, I can't just like look at this equation and just start solving it, right? Because it has two variables in it. So what would I be solving for? So what I need to do is I need to use this equation to solve for one of the variables and then plug it into the other equation. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's look at this equation here. And if I were to solve for x in this equation, the way I would do that is I would subtract y from both sides, and then I would have an equation for x, right? So I would have x equals $10,000 minus y. Okay? So if I were to subtract y from both sides, that's what I would end up with. Alright, so now let's go ahead and plug in that value of x down here. So I'm going to have 592, and then instead of writing x, right, I'm going to write that 10,000 minus y. Okay, so instead of writing this x, I'm going to write 10,000 minus y. And then that's times 0.12. Okay, I don't have to worry about the 1. Anything multiplied by 1 is itself. Times y equals 0.05 times 1. Okay, so now, it's just algebra, solving for y here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this 0.12 in, and so I'll have, 1,200 minus 0.12 times y plus 0.05 times y. Anything times 1, so basically that 1 goes away. Okay, so that equals 592. Okay, so now let's see, I should combine like terms. So I'm going to subtract 1,200 from both sides, and I'm going to be left with, so I'm going to minus 1,200 from over here, minus 1,200 from over here, and I'm be left with negative 608 on this side of the equation. And then over here, I'm going to be left with negative, so I have, this and this, which are both involve y, so I can combine like terms, and I'm going to be left with, negative 0.07 times y. Okay, so next step is I need to divide both sides by, I need to divide both sides by this negative 0.07. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So divide both sides by this negative 0.07. Right, so now these cancel, and I'm left with just the y. So negative 608 divided by negative 607. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, I'm running out of room, so I'm going to write that right here. So I'll be left with y equals 8,685.71. Okay, so that's how much money, Jack invested in the low-risk stock, right? So y is the low-risk stock money. So that's the amount of money he invested in low risk. So now all I have to do is find the amount of money he invested in the high risk. So I have this equation, this equation over here for x. X is just 10,000 minus y, so I have y now. So I'm just going to say x equals 10,000 minus y. So that's going to be 10,000 minus 8,685.71, and I'll be left with x equals 1314.29. Okay, so I'm all out of room now, but you should write your answer. You should say, he invested 1314 in the high risk, and he invested $8,685 in the low risk stock.